Welcome to the Inbound Debate. I'm James Macfarlane, and today we're going to be discussing whether we approach SEO by hard data and what Google says, or whether we make assumptions based on our own logic. I'm with Nick Pateman, who's the Technical Director of Inbound Digital Marketing, and Dan Holt, who's the Managing Director. I think we're going to start off with Dan, and let's take it away, Dan.
Okay, so what I would say is, for me, it's a pretty easy one. So when the data's there, when Google releases a statement, then that's fascinating stuff. That's really, really important. We all look at it. We all try and learn every last bit that we can. But I think there's two problems with waiting for those things to happen. First of all, very often when you wait, the opportunity to get ahead has already passed by, or you find you're already in the pitfall that you could have avoided. Secondly, even when you get the data, you still don't have a complete picture. And for that reason, I always think it's important to put yourself in the shoes of Google and ask yourself logically, what would you do if you were Google and you were trying to rank based on all the different variables? What would you do? And based on that sort of intuitive approach, try and reach a decision before anyone else does.
Okay. Well, I think the first part of the question, which is, should you look at data and should you listen to what Google says? Well, I don't agree with either of that. I think data is very hard to come by in SEO. There's never data that says something is actually like spot on. There's always correlation, technique, things like that, and you can kind of say if you do this, then you're probably going to get a better ranking. But there's no data to say, beyond like the best practices that we all know about, there's no data to say if you put your keyword five sentences in, it's going to be better than 2 sentences in. That's just not possible to work out. So I think when it comes to data, I want to go by best practices. I want to look at what other people have said, what's like the general community feel, what everyone's experienced and seen for themselves. And I won't listen to Google, because Google's just going to tell you, potentially nonsense that isn't actually going to help anything. It's just going to help Google, put more advertising, more pay-per-click stuff, and generate more revenue. So I wouldn't do either of those, but what I would do is I'd listen to sort of thought leaders in the industry, like Rand Fishkin, Danny Sullivan. If they're pushing out, if they've got a good theory about something because of what their communities have said, of what they've experienced themselves, I'll follow that and I'll look at that and I'll experiment with that. But it's when people like come to me and they say, "Oh, Nick, we need to put this keyword, at the end of the title tag because at the front it's too obvious. It's over-optimization." As far as I'm aware, that's kind of like what I call imaginary SEO. That's not SEO that's ever been proven to work. It's just pure speculation that I don't buy into at all.
Okay, so to cut in, what I think is really interesting, and I think following thought leaders, like you said, I don't think we disagree that that's a good thing to follow in our industry. One thing that I picked out that Seth Godin, which I know both of you guys really, really like reading his stuff, he put, which I think really kind of combats your point a little bit. He said, if you wait until there is another case study in your industry, you're already going to be too late.
Yeah.
So the problem is, if you follow these thought leaders and you don't start to innovate yourself, then, are you too late to the party?
No, because there's so many people that aren't doing the best practice as well. Like, there's people out there who there's canonical URL is. There's SEOs out there who call themselves SEO agencies. They don't actually have a clue. And it's all about just having a clue and knowing exactly what works.
There can't be a strategy to be a bit better than the people who are
not a bit better,
useless.
a lot better. Like knowing when
surely you want to be the best that you possibly can be, not settling for.
I've got a background in technical SEO for about sort of 7 or 8 years now. I'm able to spot when there's actually an actual issue with the way Google will crawl a site, the way Google will understand a site. Not many other SEO companies can actually do that, and that gives us an advantage.
No, I totally agree, but I'd treat that as our foundation, and then it's how we build on that.
Well, the thing is,
for me, whenever the data is always going to be incomplete, and it will always be incomplete, and whenever you can't fully isolate variables when you're doing various tests, and you can never fully isolate variables, when all those conditions are that way, you have no choice but to use your own sort of intuitive logic to bridge that gap and say
I mean, just to go in before we go back to you, like with this, I think the most obvious point here is, if you're not doing what Nick says, is there a risk that you're wasting your time, that you're damaging your site?
Can I answer? I was just going to counter what Dan was saying about taking your foundations and building on it. Well, in my opinion, with imaginary SEO, you're not necessarily building on it. You're taking your foundations and wiping it completely out.
I take issue with the terminology imaginary SEO. I think that's a little bit patronising. I mean, I would say it's more visionary SEO. I mean, I think it's more about saying, okay, well, this is the data. It's not complete. Now, if I were a search engine trying to reach certain decisions, trying to formulate my algorithm in such a way that gave the best possible user experience? Would I treat this as a positive thing? Would I treat it as a negative thing?
But that's exactly like you. I would also think the same thing. But you're a human being. You're not a search engine. And sure, you have a logical understanding of how things should work.
Okay.
Google
So
does
guys,
not have that logic.
like something that I really wanted to touch on in this debate, which I think, I don't know if you'll both agree on this or you might disagree, but typically when we use logic to end up at like a conclusion, does the logic that we use not basically correlate with the quality of our site anyway, which then further on goes into the rankings?
Well, the logic can be flawed a lot of the time. Like the way a human sees something is not necessarily.
But it correlates with quality on other aspects. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that like they can read everything.
I don't know. I mean, Google released Panda back in February 2011, and people were like, "Okay, I'm going to need to de-optimize my site," and that's kind of logical, but it's also kind of illogical as well. You don't want to go so far as removing keywords from headers and stuff. That's not logical. That's destroy the user experience.
I think in some situations that could be logical.
Okay.
No,
that's a bit of a tangent.
Well, yeah, but like if we
like,
stop that, what do you think about that? Like in terms of how the logic of your decisions might correlate with the quality anyway. Like even if it doesn't have a direct effect.
So what you're saying is if you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of the search engine,
yeah, you're not looking at hard data. You're just using logic.
Absolutely, and you say, well, if the search engine would treat it in a positive way, presumably that logically means that the user would treat it in a positive way, and therefore, even if it doesn't end up impacting SEO, it's going to impact in a positive way the user experience, which should really result in kind of positive SEO as a side effect anyway, through better engagement stats, better return rates, all those things. So I would agree. I think that's also a second very strong reason to take that logical approach.
Okay, Nick, just final statement. I think we're running out of time.
I mean, I would take data and I'll take thought leaders' opinions very, very much to heart. I'll go back to my technical SEO and look at, okay, I need to have canonicals, I need to have the H1s and H2s in the right order and all that stuff. Obviously, it gets a bit more technical than that. There's headers and stuff everyone knows about. There's certain things you would do just because it's best practice, keyword at the front of the title, element, that kind of thing. When it comes to going beyond that and kind of just guessing what might work, I would still be careful, because I think there's every chance that you're not doing the right thing and you are guessing at something that just isn't going to work, and you're taking logic and treating Google with a bit too much respect.
Okay, well, thank you guys. I think I speak for all of us where we kind of say that even if we're guessing at something, if it improves the user experience, if it improves other metrics on our site, it's probably worth doing. I know Nick's kind of argued against it for slightly more technical stuff, but I think we're all on the same page there. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this. This has been the Inbound Debate. I've been James Macfarlane. This has been Nick Pateman. This has been Dan Holt. See you later.